You know, I don't like to admit when I'm wrong, but I will admit when I'm wrong.
I would agree. I very much like being right, but
Yeah.
I like being right so much that when I am wrong, I will correct myself so that I can be right in
There you
future.
go. Exactly. And I want to be like, hey, you know what? I was wrong. Or my opinion towards this has changed.
Yes, that is, you know what? People don't realize this. You are allowed to change your opinion. You're allowed to educate yourself on things.
Yes.
You're allowed to change your perspective. That's valid. That's acceptable. And honestly, I encourage it.
That's growth.
Yeah, exactly.
So for everyone listening today, I want you to remember my words. You're allowed to change your opinion on something, especially when you're presented with new facts.
Also, I do feel like as a younger person, there were many things where I was a bit of a hipster, a bit of a gatekeeper, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to like that because everybody likes that.
Yeah.
Now, fuck it. Like what you like.
Like what you like. Love what you love. Do what you do.
Exactly.
Exactly. And if you want to change your mind about two brothers, and you can.
I mean, we'll get into it. But I will say this is one of the cases that has had me flip-flopping.
Yeah. I think I have settled on a side.
I think so too,
right?
kind of.
Maybe.
Well,
let's start the show.
Yeah, let's get into it. Hello, everyone. I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Dina. Welcome to the Grim Curriculum.
So, as you might have guessed already, we have one hell of a story for you today.
I'm glad that we waited to cover this one.
Me too. I mean, no time like the present,
no,
as it were.
Definitely. If you asked me where I stand a year ago, I probably would have given you a different answer. We're going to get to that at the end of the series. But this is, like Charlotte said, I'm flip-flopping. I flip-flopped, and now I think I am on one side, and I think I'm going to stay there.
To be honest, this is probably one of the first cases where I have been as sort of polarized from one end to the other. Most of the time when we dive into these cases, especially the true crime cases,
yeah,
I've probably mostly already made up my mind about the topic.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the first cases where I'd heard of the case and I knew a little bit about it, and I had one sort of way of thinking. But the more I got into it and the more I watched and the more I read, I was like, oh man, this is complicated.
It's very, very complicated.
Today, we will be covering the murders of Kitty and José Menendez. And what makes this case so shocking is that the perpetrators were their own two sons, Erik and Lyle, who would later claim that they killed them in self-defense due to years of physical and sexual abuse.
Many of you listening may be familiar with this case. It was heavily reported in the media and had people glued to their TVs. It's come up again most recently with the controversial Ryan Murphy series, Monsters.
And I haven't seen the series yet, I will say. But I think if the new series, the Ryan Murphy series, is the only media that you have consumed on this content, you're going to have a very different opinion, I think, than people that maybe have watched some documentaries, know a little more of the background.
Especially if you aren't familiar with the route that Ryan Murphy tends to take with his work. Because one of the things he said, I think this came out today, actually, the day we're recording, is he's openly admitted he doesn't want to talk to the brothers.
Okay, yes.
He's like, I don't give a fuck. Second thing he's saying is, they may as well buy me flowers because I am the reason people are talking about them now, which is not true, Ryan.
I mean, I like a lot of Ryan Murphy's work because I like that he picks sort of true inspiration, right? The stories that he's telling, like, for example, like, I love the show Pose. Amazing if you haven't watched it.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Obviously, it's a work of fiction. The characters are all fictional, but there's a lot of different parts of the story that are based in truth.
Yes.
A lot of the characters are based around real people and the real things that they did. And I like that a lot. It kind of gives you a lot more creative freedom, but you're like, oh, I get that reference.
Yeah.
But in this case, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of got people polarized.
He, in my humble opinion, doesn't do well with nonfiction. I mean, most famously right now, he is working on a series where he makes Ed Gein hot.
And Ed Gein's not hot.
No. I do want to take a second to talk about that particular show because it is well done. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. It is a good show.
Yeah, I'm sure if you're watching it purely for like the entertainment value, stunning, I'm sure. Yeah.
The cast is fantastic, especially Cooper Kosh. There's one episode everyone's talking about. It's called The Hurt Man.
Okay.
Episode 5. It is all filmed in one take. There are 2 camera angles.
Yes.
It is. I was holding my breath watching it.
The cinematography when it comes to that stuff,
phenomenal.
Amazing.
There is a lot in the show that was exaggerated or straight up changed to fit the story that Ryan Murphy wanted to tell. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but for those of you who have seen it, there is the Milli Vanilli funeral scene. That never happened, you guys. There's a scene, Charlotte, since you haven't watched it, where at the funeral, they say that one of the guys wanted them to play a Milli Vanilli song at the funeral after he talked about his mom. That was very inappropriate. And it's shocking when you see that because you're just like, wow, this guy's a dick. And it's like, that never happened.
You know, it's funny because I spent a lot of time on the TikToks and the song that plays by Milli Vanilli or whatever, it's come up on TikTok and I didn't realize until this very moment that that's why it's so popular right now. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, they played that for their mom. That didn't happen.
Oh my God.
The families of the brothers are not standing behind the show whatsoever, and while it has brought their names back into the public realm, it has not done them any favors. There's a new series coming out that Lyle and Erik have been directly involved in. It's going to release a few days after this episode, so we're going to discuss it next week. And the interesting thing is the majority of that series appears to be done through phone interviews with the brothers.
Oh, wow. So we're getting the word from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Interesting. We fully understand the fact that everyone is entitled to their own opinions about this case. And obviously we're going to be sharing our own. And we encourage you guys to tell us your thoughts too.
Absolutely. thegrimcurriculum@gmail.com. Let us know what you think, but wait till you get all of the facts.
Yes.
That's the key here.
Absolutely.
A crime where children kill their parents or close family members is referred to as parricide. We are going to start things off today by talking about the victims, José and Kitty.
Despite the not so great reputation that he had, José Enrique Menendez was nothing short of the epitome of an American success story. He was born in Havana, Cuba on May 6, 1944, and was sent to the United States at the age of 15 to escape the Castro regime.
José himself would later say that he was born into Cuban nobility, and that many members of his family who stayed behind had their properties and possessions seized by the government. The majority of them were then imprisoned or killed.
It's kind of the Cuban version of like the Russian Romanovs in a way. The new regime came in and sort of killed the royal family, as it were. So that kind of happened in Cuba. Once in the US, José began to take his studies and sports very seriously. He excelled in basketball and soccer, and even managed to get a swimming scholarship to Southern Illinois University.
A hard work ethic and abilities to succeed ran in his family. His father was a soccer star, and his mother found success as a champion swimmer. José's main goal throughout his life would be to push his children to succeed even more than he did.
José met Mary Louise Anderson, who went by Kitty, while studying at SIU. She was a few years older than him, having been born in 1941, but she instantly caught his attention.
Kitty was born in Chicago and was the youngest of 4 children. On the outside, her suburban upbringing seemed ideal, but upon closer inspection, life was not happy for her. Her father owned an HVAC company and did his best to provide for his family, but he was far from being husband of the year.
The family suffered abuse at his hands, and this resulted in her parents divorcing while she was still a child. This caused her to go into a deep depression. She was having a hard time making friends and struggled to maintain any kind of positive relationship with her father.
Despite everything that she went through, Kitty had dreams of living an extravagant life. She wanted more than anything to be an actress. She enrolled in the communications program at SIU, and in 1962, she won the Miss Oak Lawn beauty pageant. Her brother Brian would later say,
"She was stunningly beautiful, and I mean beautiful on the outside and even more on the inside."
José and Kitty hit it off big time, and before long, they were in love. When José was 19, the two married. His parents urged him to wait due to his young age, but he wouldn't listen. The couple moved to New York City, where José began studying at Queens College. He also worked at the now famous 21 Club as a dishwasher.
Kitty found work as a teacher, and the two had their first son, Joseph Lyle, on January 10th, 1968. Soon after, Kitty quit her job to become a full-time housewife, something that José had urged her to do. Their second son, Erik Galen, was born on November 10th, 1970. The two boys attended the prestigious Princeton Day School.
So this is a private school.
Go figure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Princeton Day School. And so I decided to look it up.
Okay.
And for a prestigious school, their website is garbage. It is very flawed and broken.
Oh, no. You know what? That's classic education websites across the board.
But I went to the website because I was like, how much does it cost to send your child to Princeton Day School?
Oh, boy.
Now, my numbers might be wrong because I just found this on Google. I couldn't find it on the website because, again, it was very broken. I'm pretty sure, according to my sources, that it costs roughly around $45,000 US per year to send your kid here.
So more or less the same as a college year, more or less. I mean, I have friends that have gone to the Shawnigan boarding school on Vancouver Island.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally like Hogwarts, you guys. Like this massive school. And obviously same sort of tuition fees as well.
Yeah.
So this is not what you and I would consider a quote unquote normal high school experience. I mean, we both went to public school.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. The boys excelled in soccer and tennis from a young age. Kitty was known to never miss one of their games. Their grades were pretty average. Teachers would say that they had trouble focusing and that they appeared immature.
Jose found work as an accountant and would eventually become manager of commercial leasing for Hertz rental cars. Hertz was acquired by RCA, and Jose transitioned into another new role. He began working on record deals and signed bands such as the Eurythmics and Duran Duran.
He even signed Ricky Martin's old band Menudo, and that's going to come up in more recent news. There's something relevant to that.
Okay.
Jose wanted to run the company, but was passed over for a vice president role after clashing with other executives. He moved on to International Video Entertainment, which would later be named Live Entertainment. Kitty was not thrilled about this because it meant uprooting their family to Los Angeles.
Jose essentially saved this company. When he started with them, they had $20 million in debt, but under his leadership, they were more successful than they had ever been. He did this by signing on major players such as Sylvester Stallone for Rambo and by cutting roughly 400 jobs. The thing that you guys will definitely start to hear is Jose is not a well-liked man.
No.
In the business industry or at home.
After their murders, there were a few people around the office that the running joke was someone that he fired killed him. Jose worked his way up in the world in a major way. A former employee of his would later say,
he was the perfect corporate executive. He had an incredible dedication to business. He was focused, specific about what he wanted from business, very much in control. He believed that whatever had to be done should be done, with no heart if necessary.
He was ruthless, but he knew. He's like, you got to fight. You got to fight to get on top. And he didn't care who he had to kick to get up there.
Well, and he had, being an immigrant and having to work so hard to get to where he was, in his mind, he was like, there is nothing that will stop me from being the absolute best.
Yeah.
And even when he achieved the new best, that was never good enough. There was always new goals above.
The family originally moved to a house in Calabasas while they waited for a new home to be built for them on a 13-acre lot. This was stopped when Jose purchased the now infamous house on Elm Drive. The house was originally built in 1927 but was redone in 1974. It boasted 6 large bedrooms, a courtyard, swimming pool, tennis court, and a guest house.
It also had quite the resume of previous tenants and owners. This included not only Elton John and Prince, but an actual Saudi prince who had rented it for a whopping $35,000 a month.
And that's in like 1980s money.
That has to be like $100,000 today. Holy shit.
US.
Woo.
It appeared that the Menendez family was living the American dream, but those who came in contact with them saw red flags. Jose expected perfection from the boys. About this, Lyle said,
my father suffered from being a perfectionist. It carried over into his home life, and it was sometimes difficult for Erik and me. So much so that he really couldn't do something well enough. It wore on him tremendously mentally, and it wore on us.
Coaches and lifeguards would say that Jose often berated them and screamed during competitions and practices for them to work harder.
Oh, I hate those parents at like kids' sporting events. They're taking it far too seriously.
They would be swimming And they're like going as fast as they absolutely can. And everyone's sitting down and Jose's standing and he's screaming, swim faster, swim harder, win.
Buddy, they're in the water. They can't hear shit.
No. A teacher of theirs would later say that Jose was, and I quote, belligerent, while Kitty was described as neglectful, often letting Jose do what he wished when it came to raising the boys.
And speaking of Jose doing whatever he wished,
it also seems like he did whoever he wished.
I'm pretty sure in my notes I put, well, he's a cheating bastard.
You did.
So he had quite a few affairs, and this affected Kitty in a huge way. She turned to alcohol and pills to numb the pain. She would attempt to take her life on several occasions. Ultimately, she decided to stay with Jose for the sake of the boys.
On one occasion, he actually bought one of his girlfriends a townhouse.
In Manhattan, no less.
Yep. The thing with Kitty is she is a very sad, broken woman.
She's a very tragic character, absolutely.
Because it seems to me like she started off great. You know, she's in university. She has big dreams. She's positive.
She was a beauty queen.
Exactly. And then she meets this guy and he ruined her.
And the wild thing is obviously Jose was very successful. He had an incredible amount of potential and he ran with it. Had he been a nicer person, nicer doesn't really cover it, but had he been a nicer person, they would have been the unstoppable power couple.
Absolutely.
But he was kind of he was an immense jackass.
He was. And I mean, not to victim blame or anything,
no,
but sometimes
not.
The victims aren't necessarily good people.
No.
There's one story that really stuck to me where she finds out that he's cheating on her with this particular woman. And so she goes to herself and she says, hey, I'm going to confront this woman. I'm going to show her stay away from my husband, go away. And she finally finds the woman and she looks at her and she says, are you still seeing him? And the woman goes, no. And she shakes her hand and walks away. And that's it.
Oh, and I'm assuming the woman was like, no. And then she was like, yes, we probably still are.
I think so, yeah.
Oh. Despite all of this, the family still maintained the facade of the perfect American family. They almost always had dinner together, went on vacations, and were quite close.
Jose dedicated himself to raising great sons who would continue the legacy that he had built. He had rules for everything: what they ate, how they spent their free time, who they dated, and even the things that they read.
He would literally quiz them at the dinner table about current events, and if they couldn't answer properly, he would berate them.
The pressure of meeting Jose's demands wore on the boys. This was seen in the form of stutters, stomach pains, and constant grinding of their teeth due to stress. The two of them also developed terrible tempers.
Lyle began losing his hair at the age of 14. When Jose noticed, he purchased an incredibly expensive toupee for him. In his words, it was better for their image. Lyle was also very childish for his age. As he was losing his hair, he was also wetting the bed and playing with stuffed animals.
And all of those are signs of someone who's being abused.
Textbook.
Absolutely. Ugh. And Lyle didn't necessarily want the toupee. But Jose he took him to this place. He bought him, it was like a $2,000 piece of hair.
Oh my God.
And it was attached. It's not just like what you would think where it just sits on your head. There's wires and clips and hooks.
There was a whole application. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And he told him because he's like, well, he wanted Lyle to get into politics ultimately. And so he said, if you want to be a politician, you got to have a good head of hair.
It's such flawed logic.
Yes.
But from his eyes, I can see where he's coming from. And the irony of all of this is your son is balding because you have stressed him out so badly. This is your fault.
And again, he's 14.
It's not normal to go bald at 14.
No.
Erik worshipped his brother Lyle, and friends of theirs would comment that they were incredibly close, but very different. Erik was sensitive and quiet, while Lyle appeared to be loud, witty, and more of a leader.
Lyle began dating at the age of 15 when he met a girl named Stacy. The two fell hard for each other and dated for a few years. They even talked to each other about someday having children. Stacy broke things off with Lyle when she was accepted to college. He attempted to win her back by offering to buy her a fur coat. This did not work.
Interesting.
But it's what he saw with his dad.
That's very true. When you're brought up in an environment where you can buy things.
Mhm.
And I don't necessarily mean just like having the financial stability to go out and go shopping. I mean like buy people.
Yes.
By gifting them things or bribing them or whatever. When you see your parents doing that, you think that that's acceptable.
And we'll see even throughout the course of this episode, that is how Jose would get the boys out of trouble.
Exactly.
And that's one thing I need to stop doing is in my head, I'm always like, the boys, the boys, the boys. These are now 50-year-old men.
Yes, this happened some time ago.
Right? And they're, they're 14, 15, 16 years old at this point. Not necessarily boys.
But still kids.
Yeah.
Jose's dream for his sons was that they would attend an Ivy League school and become successful businessmen. Lyle applied to Princeton in 1986, but was ultimately rejected. He would be accepted the following year due to his athleticism. This was around the time he met Jamie, a young woman 5 years his senior.
Jose and Kitty did not approve of the relationship and believed she only wanted him for their money. Him meeting an older girl and the parents not approving is so similar to what happened between Jose and Kitty. And I wonder if they were reminded of that in any way, or if they were just so deep in their own worlds that they were like, no.
It is of my opinion, my humble opinion, that it is the second option.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were... Anybody that was able to do any kind of self-analysis would see that. They're like, oh my God, he's doing what we did. He's dating an older lady in college or whatever, exactly like us.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they were respectfully so up their own asses at this point about the boys.
Yeah.
They genuinely didn't really know what was going on at all.
No, because the thing with Jose and Kitty is when they started dating, they were a bit of a controversial couple, and not because of the age.
But also, I would imagine because she's a white girl.
Yes.
And he's a Cuban immigrant.
Absolutely. And this is like the 60s. And they said that when they were walking, they'd hold hands and walk throughout the campus, and everyone would stop what they were doing and just stare at them.
It still blows my mind. I know that obviously racism is a massive systemic issue.
Yeah.
Clearly, we could go on, we could have a whole podcast just on that alone. But I often forget it wasn't that long ago that this sort of behavior was considered like unacceptable.
Yeah.
Today, you and I would think nothing of it.
No, not at all.
We'd be like, oh, look at that cute couple. Or probably wouldn't think anything of it at all. We just keep walking.
Yeah, exactly. During his first semester at Princeton, Lyle got in trouble for plagiarism. He confided in his Aunt Terry, who told Jose, who didn't think Lyle would get into too much trouble. And here's the thing with Princeton. Apparently, the very last step for getting into Princeton is you sit down and you have to sign it's like an honesty contract.
Yes, they took that shit very seriously.
So for Jose, he's like, oh, one-time thing. It was for a small project. It was like some lab or whatever. He couldn't have been more wrong. Lyle was issued a 1-year suspension, which infuriated Jose, who appealed to the dean with little luck.
Lyle hated school. He wanted to own a restaurant more than anything else, which of course, Jose did not approve of.
During his year away from school, Jose got Lyle a job at Live Entertainment. He was treated like any other employee and even had to arrange appointments to see his father.
Lyle was not well liked. He often showed up late and would even skip work on nice days in favor of playing tennis. One of his associates complained to Jose. Jose asked him what he would suggest they do with Lyle if he wasn't the boss's son, and the associate said that they would fire him.
Jose said, all right, and fired him.
This dude was basically like, look, if this was any other person in this company and not your son, you yourself would have fired them months ago.
And Jose is so ruthless, like we said, that he's not going to fuck around and let favoritism stand in the way of him doing his job.
Not. No, he's not going to pull punches just because you're my offspring.
No, his career comes first.
He sees that he's creating two very spoiled boys by now, and in his mind, he's giving them the world, but nothing he does is enough for them. Which is ironic, because nothing they did was good enough for him.
It's a vicious cycle. But he was, he was very cruel to them. But again, we talked about buying love and things like that. There's one instance where he buys one of them an Alfa Romero, and he gives him this car and he takes him to the dealership, and Jose is so it's a big deal, right? And one of the guys, I don't remember if it was Lyle or Erik, but he sits in it and he's like, I wanted a fucking Porsche. And he freaks out and he's like, I am not driving this. I wanted a Porsche. You didn't get me a Porsche. And one of the first things that he bought when the parents were killed was a Porsche.
Exactly. Lyle eventually returned to Princeton and was absolutely infuriated to find out that he had been given a roommate. He threw the guy out. Jose wrote a letter to the school asking for Lyle to have a single room, and they obliged.
Erik was at home during all of this. One of Kitty's main concerns with Erik, among many, was that she believed that he was gay. In fact, when they moved to Calabasas, she gave him an order to find a girlfriend in 6 months.
Okay, Mom, just let the boy be.
Right, let him be. He found a girlfriend, but the relationship quickly fizzled. He became close friends with a fella named Craig Signorelli, and together they wrote a screenplay they called Friends.
So, Friends was about Hamilton Cromwell, a well-off young man who kills his family in order to gain control over his inheritance.
It shouldn't surprise any of you listening to know that this would bite Erik in the ass big time during the trial.
I think it becomes a case of, is art imitating life, or is life imitating art?
Yes, and I have part of the screenplay that I'd like to read us. So it does have Hamilton Cromwell, who's 18. It says he lives a pampered life, but he has a fascination with dying. The first scene opens with Cromwell reading the family will, which bestows a fortune of $157 million on him.
Oh, that's a lot of money.
Yes. So here it is. Hamilton smiles sadistically. The next scene opens with Cromwell poised outside his parents' door. The door opens, exposing the luxurious suite and Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton Cromwell lying in bed. Their faces are of questioning horror as Hamilton closes the door gently. Hamilton then says, "Good evening, mother. Good evening, father." And in brackets it says, his voice is of attempted compassion, but the hatred completely overwhelms it.
For some reason, and I know this isn't correct because this is not how Erik is imagining it, but I'm picturing Stewie Griffin as the main character.
That's amazing.
Because in my mind, it's like, that's kind of like, oh, the murderous child that has it out for his mother.
The scene fades. The actual murder of Cromwell's parents is left to the audience's imagination. But a later scene shows Cromwell at his typewriter writing a book. Zoom camera to paper, it reads, 5 Deaths to Perfection, Chapter 1, Mr. and Mrs. Jacob Cromwell. So it's about a guy writing about a guy killing his parents.
Okay.
Next on Cromwell's list is a former girlfriend who he kills with a rope. 2 more killings follow that one. Later, he kidnaps a friend and tells him, "I am in the process of writing a masterpiece of a novel which challenges the complexity of human understanding. Let us call this a game of survival. I will frame either you or your friend Joe for the murders." His friend, who we see in the script is named Mike, with frightened disgust says, "You're mad." When Cromwell is arrested for one murder, he quickly cows the police with an ironclad alibi. In the end, his 5 murder victims have been discovered frozen in ice in his basement. Cromwell is shot and killed by one of his friends. He dies with a smile on his face. Later in court, the friend listens to a tape-recorded message from Hamilton. It says, "Your time has come to realize your failure as a player in the game of death. You must understand, Mike, that the price a player pays for failure in the game of life is death." He didn't have a career in this? And then the Friends theme song plays.
I was thinking to myself, it kind of reminds me when we talked about the Slender Man stabbings, how one of the girls would take her friend and create her in The Sims and then burn her house down. In hindsight, big red flag.
Yeah.
Normally, not the biggest red flag. This is Erik's script to me. In hindsight, big red flag. Obviously, they used it in court to sort of, vilify him.
Yeah.
But had nothing bad happened, you'd be like, oh shit, he was an angsty 18-year-old. That's just it, right?
Yeah, it's just cringy writing that I think, I know I did a lot of it when I was that age. I'm sure a lot of you listening did. Like, that's how people express themselves. And especially if he's having these feelings of, his dad is abusing him, his parents aren't great, he's gonna write stuff like this. And that's fine.
It's an
as
outlet.
long as you don't go ahead and kill your parents.
Exactly. There's healthy ways of coping and then there's very unhealthy ways of coping.
Yes.
In July of 1988, Erik and Lyle began breaking into homes, and this was a way for them to make money without having to work or ask Jose for anything. They often targeted homes that belonged to the parents of their friends. They stole approximately $100,000 worth of items, which made the crimes that they committed a felony.
And they weren't great criminals. Erik was stopped by a police officer for a traffic violation, and numerous stolen items were found in his car. At one point, I guess they felt bad or something, and they decided to return a safe to a house that they had broken into, but they ended up putting the safe back into the wrong house, which just tied those two crimes together.
That is some Mr. Bean levels of bullshit.
It really is.
Jose was livid. He didn't want his sons to spend time in jail, so he hired a very expensive defense attorney who was able to work out a deal with the DA's office that would absolve Lyle of all of the crimes if Erik, a minor, took the blame. He was given community service, and Jose wrote an $11,000 check to cover the items that they could not return.
He would do that a lot.
He would. There was one instance in particular where they had robbed this lady's house, and Jose basically marched them back to the house and was like, how much? Whatever. And he wrote a check there and then to cover the cost of it, just so that she basically under the sort of implication that, hey, if I write you this check, you're not going to call authorities and press charges.
There was also an instance where one of them, probably not Erik, got a girl pregnant.
Oh.
And so Jose hears about this and he flips out.
Of course.
Because that's just another person that's, potentially going to get the money at the end of the day. And he goes to this girl and he allegedly offered her a check for $100,000 if she dealt with the pregnancy.
Whoa. It wouldn't surprise me at this point if it was kind of that case. You hear of it a lot with these very old money families.
Yeah.
And obviously the Menendezes weren't old money. They were new money. But the case where it's either, my child is engaged to someone we do not approve of, here's $5 million to go away.
Yeah.
And sometimes people take it, sometimes they don't. That's up to you. But it wouldn't surprise me if that might have also been the case had either of the brothers actually had sort of a long-term romantic interest.
Yeah. And I mean, they definitely, Lyle dated. He had girlfriends. He was very liked by women. Because the thing to keep in mind, too, is without being too crass about it, they were athletic, good-looking young men.
And from a very quote unquote good rich family.
Yes,
they were prizes in
exactly.
That sense.
They had money, they flashed their money around, they had nice cars. The girls liked them a lot.
Yep. All of this brings us to the summer of 1989. Jose was doing better than ever at work. His contract had been extended, and Live Entertainment invested in something called a key man life insurance policy. This meant that if something happened to Jose, the company would continue running without worrying about going under. This policy was valued at $5 million. At one point, he threatened to cut the brothers off from their inheritance due to their poor behavior.
Kitty, on the other hand, was not doing well. She was seeing a psychologist on a regular basis and confided that she was feeling paranoid. She began locking the bedroom door before going to bed and stated that she was afraid of her sons.
Poor Kitty really did have a spiral, because when they were in New York and Jose was cheating left, right, and center, he had a number of mistresses at any one time. So that obviously put her into a deep depression. And then with the move all the way to the West Coast from the East Coast, she was forced to leave behind her friends and family that were essentially the only support she had, because she certainly wasn't getting it from Jose or her sons. And so now she's, an entire continent away from her support system.
Yeah.
Shit is still going rapidly downhill. Make no mistake, Jose is still not being faithful to her.
No.
And she is just dipping deeper and deeper and deeper into this horrible depression, and she is losing it.
And the sons, they're getting older, they're getting bigger, they're getting scarier to her. There is a story that they talked about, because at one point Jose bought them a condo to live in, right? And so she took away their keys.
Oh.
And they came over to the house on a very regular basis. And what she would do was, even if it was the middle of the night and they wanted to come home, she would get up and she would not sleep while they were there, and she would make sure that she was there to let them into the house rather than giving them keys to the house, because she didn't trust them at all.
Whoa.
And on top of that, she's locking herself in her room. She's terrified of them.
Crazy. After the burglaries, the brothers began seeing Jerome Oziel, a psychologist. Jose and Kitty had permission to discuss the contents of their sessions with him. On July 19th, Kitty told her psychologist that she feared her sons were sociopaths.
Jerome Oziel is a character.
He sure is. He sure is. For a medical mental health professional.
Yes.
He is one of the shadiest motherfuckers in this story.
Absolutely, because just like Jose, Jerome had a lot of side ladies.
He sure did.
And one of them was a lady by the name of, this is one of the strangest names I've heard in a long time.
When I first heard it, I had to look it up to confirm that that's what her name was, because I had never heard it before.
Judalon.
Yeah. Judalon.
So Judalon was someone that he was dating, and eventually she would become a huge part of the case because she would end up essentially spying on them. So that's a whole interesting story.
Yeah.
Judalon.
Oh, yeah. She was his lover and his patient, in case you're wondering about lines being crossed.
Yes, she started off as his patient, and he was just like, hey, I know what's in your brain.
Oh, and by the way, Dr. Oziel is married with a family at home.
Oh, yes, that's probably important.
He's not just a single man sleeping with his patients. He has a family.
Yep.
Jose and Kitty just couldn't understand what was wrong with their sons. They were involved in crime and doing poorly in school, and they also had terrible tempers. Lyle had his license suspended and on one occasion caused so much damage at their country club that the family's membership was revoked, and Jose had to pay to repair the damage. I'm sure him being humiliated like that was not pleasant.
No, and basically what happened was him and a friend broke into the country club at night, and they stole a golf cart, and they drove it all throughout the golf course and like tore up the lawn, and it was a lot of money that Jose had to pay.
In a Beverly Hills golf course.
Yeah. It was around this time that a terrible family fight happened at the dinner table. In a fit of rage, Kitty tore off the toupee that Lyle wore in front of the family, which, again, this is not just like a piece of glue. I can only imagine how bad that hurt.
Yeah, imagine someone essentially like waxing your entire scalp.
She scalped him.
She did. She scalped him at the dinner table.
All of this, when it happens, absolutely shocks Erik, because he worships his brother. His brother is like the epitome of strength and leadership. He had never seen him so vulnerable. And he also had no clue about the whole toupee thing to begin with.
That's wild to me. That's your brother. I'm pretty sure if my sister was wearing a weave the entire time, I would know about it.
But that's how ashamed he was of this toupee.
Wild.
Because the thing is, for the toupee to work, he was balding, obviously, but he basically had to like shave the entire top part of his head and leave like a little like side chunk of hair
to attach it to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean,
she probably ripped out a bunch of his real hair too.
Oh, absolutely.
This is when the brothers say that they confided something in each other that no one knew. Jose Menendez had been sexually assaulting both of them. They would later claim that this is when the two began seriously speaking about killing both of their parents. Jose, because of the abuse, and Kitty, to put her out of her misery.
And that's one theory, is they were like, well, you know, she's tried to end her life 3 times. Let's not make her live without her husband, which is a theory that a lot of killers have. Like a lot of them will do that. You know, you get rid of the witness because you don't want to spare them the
tragedy of surviving the situation.
But many people do believe that they also killed Kitty, because if they just killed Jose,
she'd be a witness
and she would get the money.
Exactly. They purchased a gun using an ID that belonged to a friend, and we'll talk about this more when we cover the trial next week.
On August 19th, the family chartered a boat to go shark fishing, which is such a rich people activity.
Oh, so, yeah.
Jose stayed in the back of the boat. The brothers kept to themselves on the opposite side away from him, and Kitty stayed below in the cabin.
According to the crew of the boat, there was noticeable tension. Lyle and Erik would later say that they believed their parents were going to kill them and throw them overboard.
On the evening of August 20th, Lyle and Erik told their parents that they were going to go see a movie. Kitty and Jose settled in for an evening of TV. They snacked on strawberries and ice cream as they relaxed together, and they watched a James Bond movie.
Aw. I mean, my parents do shit like that all the time.
Right? They were like in sweatpants and just like super comfy night, ice cream.
It's like a good little date night. And I mean, as much as their relationship was pretty freaking rocky, all things considered, not a bad evening.
It's a nice evening.
What happens next remains a bit of a mystery, as a few different stories have been told over the years. What we do know is that Lyle and Erik entered the den. Jose was shot 6 times, Kitty a total of 10. Before the fatal shot, Kitty attempted to crawl away. Lyle ran to the car for more ammunition and then shot her point blank in the face.
Immediately after the shots were fired, they remained in the house for a while until they realized no one had called the police. A neighbor would later report that he heard what he thought was firecrackers at around 10 p.m., but he didn't report it.
And the reason the neighbor thought that it was just fireworks is because the shots happened in such rapid succession, bang, 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 that he was like, oh yeah, there's no way that's a gun. Also, they live in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
Shit like this doesn't happen in Beverly Hills.
No. You're not hearing gunshots in the middle of the night.
Exactly. And the neighbor was like, none of my business.
Yeah, someone's having a celebration.
Once they left the house, they disposed of their clothes and buried the shotguns. They went to get tickets for Batman as an alibi and then went to the Taste of LA festival to make sure that people saw them.
When they returned home at around 12 a.m., they were shocked to see that the police still hadn't been called. This is when Lyle made the following call to 911.
Yes, police. What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? Sorry. My parents. Pardon me? What? Who? Are they still there? The people. No. Not there. Were they? Yes. Is the person still there? What happened? We have units around. What happened? You came home and found who? Mom and Dad. You know they're still in the house. The people that did the shoot. Get away from them. Okay. Hey, let me talk to Erik. Who is the person that was? My mom and my dad. Your mom and dad? My mom and my dad. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we're on our way over there with the ambulance. Okay, I gotta go.
Okay.
Not an actor. I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. Not an actor.
If you're watching on Patreon, you probably saw my facial expressions, and for that, I'm so sorry. The thing is, obviously, yeah, not actors.
No.
And the fact that the poor dispatcher who first picks up the lady is like, what is can you please tell me what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
And he's just wailing so much so that she's like, fuck it, I'm gonna go get a supervisor.
Yeah, seriously.
And then the supervisor's like, what is happening? Are they still in the house? Who has been shot? And you just hear them wailing.
Which I'm sure, of course, if this was real, you're going to sound a little like that.
Absolutely.
But it's so like over the top.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Again, truthfully, if this, we know what we know.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah.
The brothers did it.
Mm-hmm.
We know this. This is a fact. But in a situation like that, if you were to come home and see your family members like that, who's to say how you would actually react? You know, some people are going to be absolutely hysterical.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are going to freeze. Some people are going to, you know, they're going to lock it in and go full cold, which also doesn't necessarily look good, but it can be a way of your brain protecting yourself from trauma. You compartmentalize, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have always been taught from a very young age, you know, do not panic and be prepared. It's okay. Speak quietly, get the information out so that you can get an ambulance there or whatever.
Yeah.
In that moment, you never know how you're truly going to react. You can't be prepared for something like that. But these guys did it.
They did it. I mean, we know what we know.
Yes.
So it's, to me, obviously an over-exaggeration.
Yes. Yeah.
But when you don't know and you're
Mhm.
getting that call and someone's hysterical, you could think, holy fuck, like he just found his parents dead. Of course he's hysterical.
Well, and she keeps asking, is the person that did it still there? Is the person that did it still there? She, in that moment, is probably concerned for their safety.
Of course.
Get out of the house. What if the attacker is still there?
Yeah.
Not knowing the whole time that the attackers are the ones that are making the phone call, but
I just wish we could know what happened in the moments leading up to that phone call. Cause I'm sure they sat down, they discussed it. They're like, okay, you're the one with acting experience. You're going to call. This is what you're going to say. This is how you're going to react. And then they were like, and go.
I think so.
Yeah.
I genuinely think so. Although I will say, Erik is sort of the one that cracks in the end, shall we say.
Yes.
There was probably, you just murdered your parents. There has to be some part of you that feels emotional about that in one way or another. So
Yeah.
I almost wonder if it sort of began as, like, oh, okay, you're going to cry, we're going to call and go and scene. But I almost wonder if once he started going, he was like, oh shit, we've just killed our parents. Like, I can't get it off. Like, I can't get the words out.
Well, sometimes when you have emotions that are pent up and you let it out just a little bit, then it all comes out.
Yeah. So,
and they had time between the murders and this phone call where the adrenaline would have worn down. They've done things. They've tried to watch Batman. You know what I mean? Like, so that initial shock is gone, and then they come back to the house and see them again, and they're just like, oh, we really did this.
Yeah. I wonder what was going through their minds actually in that moment. Well, that is where we will pick up next week with the investigation and the trial and the conclusion to the Menendez murders.
I specifically didn't want to get into some of the new information and theories today because I want everyone to sit on what we talked about here for a week.
Yeah. Because I think once the trial begins, and I have this sort of strange respect for their defense lawyer. She's an interesting character.
She's a hound. She is a tough woman for sure. She is,
yeah.
Now, I will say, for those of you who are interested in this case and you want to know more, the entire trial is available on Court TV.
The first trial.
Yes, because there were no cameras in the second trial.
Yes.
So you can see that first trial and you can see, their testimony and all of that. And it's one of those trials where it's not a matter of whether or not they are innocent. It's whether or not their crime was justified.
Exactly. And that's where I'm not sure of my decision on it just yet, I don't think.
And I mean, even in the we talked about it on Extra Credit a few months ago, where new things had been picked up and they were potentially going to be picked up by the Innocence Project. Even Kim Kardashian has gone to talk to them. And in an era that we have like right now where we're seeing people like Gypsy Rose, who, involved in the murder of her mother. No, she didn't do it herself, but still. She's out there making TikToks and, making money with her $3 million baby registry. She's out. Whereas they who have also been abused by their parents, which the more we find out, the more it seems that is absolutely true. They've done 30 plus years.
So what's the difference?
Right?
Why are they still in prison and why is she not? And obviously there's nuance to everything.
Of course.
I have a lot to say.
Me too.
But I'm going to save it.
Yeah. I honestly, it's one of those things where I am very invested in this case. Because usually when we talk about stuff, it's been wrapped up.
Yeah, it's wrapped up. We often say there is a time and a place for the death penalty.
Yeah.
And many, many people thought that the two brothers should have been put to death.
Yeah.
I'm going to say right now, I don't think they should have been.
Absolutely not.
Which they weren't, obviously.
No,
they're still alive.
Alert,
They're still alive. I think this is a case where the death penalty does not apply.
I agree
in my
completely. I could
opinion.
not agree with you more. Yeah.
So, but yeah, we'll get into it more.
So much to say, so much. Next week, we're going to talk about everything else. Like Charlotte said, there is going to be a lot of discussion to be had, which is why we want to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
So if you have theories or information or just opinions that you want to share with us, thegrimcurriculum@gmail.com, let us know, because I am curious to see not only what people's opinions are on this, but how much has your opinion shifted in the last year?
If you know what, actually, if this is your first time hearing about the case or hearing more about it, because I'm sure you've heard about it at this point, you've probably heard the Menendez brothers name thrown around quite a bit.
Yeah.
But if this is the first time you're learning the details of it, tell us your opinion. And then next week, when we kind of wrap it up and talk a little more, let us know if your opinion changes.
Yeah.
Do you think they were just two shitheads that were spoiled rotten and went far too far? Or do you think that they were these sort of tragic characters who were in an abusive family and felt that they had no other choice?
Yeah.
Because I think those are kind of the two ends of the spectrum, I feel.
Absolutely. Because to clarify, no one is saying that they didn't do this.
No, they absolutely
did.
did.
They say that. They're admitting to this, right? So much.
We'll get into it.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So, with all that, of course, we have the usual end of episode stuff.
Follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/thegrimcurriculum. We are on YouTube, where we do a weekly episode premiere at 12 p.m. MST on Saturdays.
We're on all the socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok. We post the reels. So if you're not on Patreon watching the video episodes, we do post clips, or rather I should say Dina mostly posts the clips across TikTok and reels and YouTube shorts. You can also check out the Patreon, which we'll get into in a sec. We do have a free trial, which is a week long. So if you want to get some of the video content, but you're not sure if you want to fully dive into the deep end yet, but if you do want to fully dive into the deep end, it's as little as $3 a month. And you get the video episodes. There's extra content. The free tier, if you want to sign up as well, for $0 a month, we do episode reveals. So if you want to know what the story is going to be ahead of time, then you can sign up and see that there as well. What else?
Let's talk about Patreon.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. I want to give a huge shout out, or we want to give a huge shout out to our Grim VIPs and up. Those are the beautiful, beautiful creatures who are on our highest tier on Patreon. So I want to give a huge shout out to, we got a new one.
Yeah, we did.
Huge shout out. Hello, Carrie.
Hello.
Carrie, thank you so much. Welcome. And thank you so much to Atlantean Jedi, Brian, Bob, Judy, Hillary, Nova, Kevinus Musicus, Steven Centauri, Lisa, and Mayhem Mudkip.
Thank you, y'all guys. All the titty city, the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas.
Every time that list grows and we add one more name, I'm just like,
I'm so
oh
excited.
my God, yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want your name on this list, which you should, because it's great, you know how to do it. Go see us.
You know what to do.
Yep, we told you.
One thing I will say real quick before we wrap up, I do Extra Life every year. And if you guys don't know what that is, it is a fantastic charity where once a year, sometimes multiple times a year if you're a super keener, but once a year in November, gamers all over the world stream, play games, whether it's video games or tabletop RPGs or what have you, for 24 hours straight to raise money for children's hospitals all over North America. I personally raise money for the Stollery Children's Hospital here in Edmonton.
It's a great cause.
It is. And I'll have some more details for you guys ready. But if you've been around for a while, you already know that I do this every year. So stay tuned for the details. I'll be doing some streams. And also, speaking of streams, we'll probably be doing another Grim Curriculum one here pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, we had so much fun. If you have games you want us to play, let us know. I did have a listener reach out and say that there is a super fun horror mod for Minecraft that they want us to play.
Ooh, also, speaking of Minecraft, they have a new update coming.
Ooh.
And actually, speaking of spooky, it's a new sort of spooky biome, and there's a new mob in it that's apparently quite scary.
When is this coming out?
Pretty soon, I think. I don't know off the top of my head, but we got it because I love some Minecraft.
I love Minecraft. I really do.
Also, I've heard some of you guys over in the Discord say that you want to see us play some Dead by Daylight.
Yes.
We're both terrible, but
so bad.
We'll do it for the people.
I will. I used to play it on my streams and I played it for a very long time.
Same.
And I just didn't improve.
I played for a long time and I got pretty good for a bit, but it's been so long since I've played with any seriousness. There's like 300 new killers,
Oh my God,
a
seriously.
billion new maps. I'm so different perks. I'm so out of the loop that I'm just a baby again. But anyway, all that to say is we'll stream at some point on Twitch. Hopefully soon, but we'll keep you guys informed.
Yeah, we'll let y'all know.
Yeah.
And don't forget, we have a second show. So listen to Extra Credit. We do current events. We do all sorts of fun stuff. Charlotte shares the occasional volcano update, which I always look forward to. And we end every episode off with a strange and unusual death. It's a good time. So check that out too. There's like 30 some odd episodes of that every second Wednesday. Anything else?
No, I think we covered all the bases.
Alrighty. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been The Grim Curriculum. I have an interesting one for you today.
Ooh, you know me, I love a good fun fact.
Cannibalism is legal in a number of countries, including the Netherlands. As long as the meat is legally obtained, you're good to go.
Whoa. I do love a good cannibal fact.
Bye.